7-1, yes, you dunked on people, but did you see Shaq's agility, his mobility, his athleticism,
agility
his
and mobility
post moves, etc., etc.? Yeah, I thought there was a couple of players more skilled than Shaq.
Right.
Absolutely,
More skilled, but better.
Okay, because now we're debating the definition of better. So let's move on here. So as for the Suns and Chris Paul, they've lost their 3 NBA finals. And still looking for the franchise's first championship, Chris Paul became the first player to lose 4 best-of-7 series in which his team led 2-0. He's one of 5 players ever with 10 or more All-NBA selections without winning an NBA title, alongside Hall of Famers Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, John Stockton, and Elgin Baylor. Here's CP3.
It'll take a while to process this or whatnot, but it's the same mentality. Get back to work. You know what I mean? I ain't retiring, if that's what you're asking. That's out. So, you know, back to work. Nobody probably expected us to be where we are except for us, you know, but, excuse me, it is what it is. You know, like I said, all season long with our team, ain't no moral victories.
Stephen A., do you think Chris Paul's legacy is taking a hit after these finals?
No. I don't think it's elevated, but I don't think it took a hit because even though there was a couple of games he certainly could have played better, and he ended up losing in the NBA Finals. Last night in Game 6, he was the best player on the court for the Phoenix Suns. He showed up. Devin Booker, God bless him, because I got a lot of love for that kid, and I think he's got a bright future. He didn't show up to his capabilities. Mikal Bridges was a no-show. Crowder wasn't that effective offensively, even though his numbers ended up decent. DeAndre Ayton looked absolutely petrified. He was bobbling rebounds. He was bobbling passes into the interior. He wasn't himself. Cameron Johnson is somebody that was not embraced as far as I'm concerned. I thought he spent a lot of time being ignored for most of this series, not to my liking. And then last night when you needed him to deliver, he couldn't do it as well. And I'm looking at a 36-year-old miniature guard at 6 feet, devoid of the athleticism that, you know, a lot of these guards have. And he went out there and he got them to Game 6 of an NBA Finals. Again, his stock was not elevated because he ultimately lost in the NBA Finals and lost 4 straight games after being up 2-0. And it's the 4th time in his playoff in his career that he's lost a 2-0 lead in the postseason, which is the most in history. We get all of that. But in the end, if he had wet the bed, if he had played like garbage, if he had not showed up to do what he could, that would be different. There were times last night I wished he would have been a bit more aggressive shooting the basketball, but they had clearly made the decision, we're going to live and die with Booker, and they kept giving Booker the ball. But in the end, Chris Paul ended up being their best player on the court in Game 6. And because of that reality, I look at him and I don't say it's diminished. I just say it's stagnant. It's not going anywhere. It certainly wasn't elevated. And that's what the reality is for me.
Okay, now, I want you to stay with me here. I want your cranky self this morning who hasn't slept in a month to stay with me here, because I want to hear your response to this.
Okay.
He has hurt. His legacy was hurt. And this is what I mean. Chris Paul is a brilliant player, the perfect point guard, point god. But there have been many collapses in the playoffs in the past. And you can come up with plausible excuses for many of them. But still, he was usually the best player on the team. And the one time who sets the tone. And so, once again, what people will point to is Chris Paul had games where he blew it, where he didn't step up in the playoffs. It gives me no pleasure to say this. I love Chris Paul. I was rooting for him to win this game openly. Even though I'm supposed to be important.
Staples Center and ultimately won Game 7 back at the Toyota Center in Houston. This was a Milwaukee Bucks team that all of us walked into the series, with the exception of you, and it's not to knock you because you had a good point about what you were saying about the Suns. But the reality is that if Giannis Antetokounmpo was healthy, we weren't picking the Phoenix Suns. We knew that if Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek Freak, were healthy, they were bigger, they were stronger, they were more athletic, they would attack the basket, and they would attack the thinness of the Phoenix Suns, particularly on their front line. You're talking about a point guard who's a quintessential point guard who made his bones about being from being a floor general, running a team and maximizing the potential around him. But when those other guys can't do but so much because they simply are outmanned, which the Phoenix
we got plenty more time to get into the NBA Finals in style, becoming just the 7th player in NBA history to score 50 points in a finals game, but he dominated all series long. The Greek Freak averaged over 35 points per game in the finals. That was the 3rd most in a player's first finals appearance in NBA history. That led him to winning finals MVP. He's just the 3rd player ever to win MVP, finals MVP, and Defensive Player of the Year in his career, joining Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon. NBA champion Kendrick Perkins, kind enough to join us now. Big Perk, good to see you as always, sir. We'll get you on the screen in just a second. I'll get to you in a second, Perk. Stephen A., is this the best closeout performance in finals history?
It's right there. It's hard for me to eclipse Jordan's 45 because it was a game-winning shot. It was pressure. It was on the road against a loaded Utah Jazz team, and Michael Jordan delivered the goods. I got one of my boys, Champ, based out of Detroit. I'm about to block him for the entire summer because he thinks he knows basketball.
Up, Champ?
He's one of those guys. It's important to mention his name because he's so starving for attention when it comes to the sport of basketball. Kendrick Perkins, Max Kellerman, Molly. His name is Champ. He's based out of Detroit because it's so important for him to get recognition. He's just starving for it. That he texts me more than my daughters when it comes to the sport of basketball. Just an annoying ass person. I'm getting ready to block him for the whole damn summer.
You do need sleep.
By the way, these are his friends.
I love him, but when you get on my nerves, you know how I am. Max can speak to that from a level of expertise. But it's just ridiculous. He's the same guy that had Mike. He said that he wouldn't even have LeBron James in the top 10. So it's credibility just goes out of the window right there.
All right, Champ. Come on, Champ. Get it together.
Done.
Champ's not even the top 10 contender.
It's ridiculous. But at the end of the day, Michael Jordan being on the road, obviously that's a very, very big deal. Dropping 45, crossover, game-winning shot, epic, memorable, the whole bit. But Giannis was just so dominant last night. I don't think that any of us are in a position to look at an NBA Finals closeout game and say, oh, this performance was better or that performance was better. It might have been aesthetically better when you look at Jordan in the crossover and the pose that we still hold on to more than 20 years later, and stuff like that. Magic Johnson, filling in for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, playing center against Caldwell Jones and Darryl Dawkins, Chocolate Thunder, and people like that in the early 80s. We get all of that. But Giannis last night was so unstoppable. And to see him just shred all the critics, all the cynicism, you know, the vitriol that was being thrown in his direction where people anticipated that, you know, he was going to miss his free throws. If he had just made shots from the field, then that would be one thing. But to do it by hitting 17 of 19 free throws when the guy, you know, just struggles to hit free throws so flagrantly so, that's the kind of stuff that seals the deal and makes you say, hey,
before I make my point,
I can't put anything above it.
Question. You got on me in the very first segment because when asked if he is the best player in the world, I said Giannis can't be just dismissed from the conversation. Push come to shove, I put him third, but the title is disputed. Now, are you turning around and doing the same thing here? Or because are you saying, yes, this is the best performance in a closeout game?